I demand a trial by combat.
This is Let's Get Litty Read Along, GOT edition. Escape into the land of Westeros each week as we travel through the Seven Kingdoms. Which house will prevail and rule the Iron Throne, or gain its independence? Is a bigger evil really lurking beyond the wall? With decade-long summers and even longer winters, grab your favorite drink, sit back, and relax because reading is coming. Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Let's Get Litty, and as always, I'm your host, Zana Gray. If you're new here, we love reading, we love Game of Thrones, and we love getting lit. A lot of us don't always have time to just sit down and read a book, so I'm here to bring out that inner geek and read for you. Today, we're kicking this episode off with a really hefty pour of wine and a couple glasses deep already. So we're gonna prep and get our drink ready. One for a good measure. So refreshing. Now, quick disclaimer as we get into today's episode. I need everyone to remember this is the captain of the Hot Mess Express, so ignore the background in this video. I am still working on getting our space set up, so it's gonna look a little janky and a little until the new desk comes in and the backdrops and the lighting, and one day we're gonna get there and it's gonna look fantastic and it's gonna be a fantasy world. So bear with me and just use that imagination. If you don't know SpongeBob, this isn't your place. Now, as you can tell, I am a little lit tonight, but that's what we're here for. We're here to get lit with our drinks and lit with our literature. If you are someone that's just listening on Apple or Spotify, jump on over to YouTube or our home-based website, Media Network, to watch the video. So there's always a video option each episode. Something that's going to be new starting this episode 2, is during the video, I will have the book pages showing when we get to the reading segment. So if you don't have the book or you're someone who likes to read along as I'm reading to you, those pages will be available as we go through. Now, I did say last week that there's going to be a word of the week, right? Where we take a drink every time we hear a certain word. Again, this does not have to be alcohol. That's my choice tonight. But we do support our sober friends here and our alcoholic friends. So I'm going to be switching it up every time. However, you drink what you want to drink. If this is the morning for you, drink morning drinks. I'm not a coffee drinker, so my morning drink is soda or water or some kind of pre-workout drink. If you drink that stuff at night, drink it. If you want to take shots, take a shot. If you want to drink from the bottle, cheers and drink from the bottle. So instead of a word of the week, we're going to have an action of the week. So this week, take a drink or a shot or a sip anytime that I cannot pronounce a word in this book or have to reread a sentence. As I talked about last week, there are some hard words in these books, and I'm not going to look them up beforehand. This isn't a research podcast. This is a just have fun read podcast. So I'm sure that's going to happen. If it happens too much, I'm sorry for anyone who's drinking alcohol. Now, I'll quit wasting time and wine hammering on, and we'll just jump right into the story for this week. We're going to cover 2 chapters today, but last week we left off and began the whole journey, starting with Game of Thrones book, and we read the prologue. And during the prologue, we followed a group of the Night's Watch beyond the wall and had our first encounter with the dead. We don't know what that dead is, who they are, how they came back to life yet. Again, I'm trying not to pre-spoil, because if we do have any listeners who are just brand new to Game of Thrones, I've never seen the show, I don't want to completely ruin things. But for those of us, if you know, you know. Let's go. Let's go. All right. This week, our chapter starts with Bran. I zoned out really quick. Apparently, the wine has caught up with me from the pre-set up cups. The morning had dawned clear and cold, with a crispness that hinted at the end of summer. They set forth at daybreak to see a man beheaded, 20 in all, and Bran rode among them, nervous with excitement. It's technically Bran, but I'm not going to take a drink from that one. This was the first time he had deemed old enough to go with his Lord Father and his brothers to see the king's justice done. It was the 9th year of summer and the 7th of Bran's life. The man had been taken outside a small holdfast in the hills. Robb thought he was a wildling, his sword sworn to man's raider, the king beyond the wall. It made Bran's skin prickle to think of it. He remembered the hearth tales old Nan used to tell them. The wildlings were cruel men, she said, slavers and slayers and thieves. They consorted with giants and ghouls, stole girl children in the dead of the night, and drank blood from polished horns. And their women lay with others in the long night to sire terrible half-human children. But the man they found bound hand and foot to the holdfast wall awaiting. The king's justice was old and scrawny, not much taller than Robb. He had lost both ears and a finger to frostbite, and he dressed all in black. The same as a brother of the Night's Watch, except that his furs were ragged and greasy. The breath of the man and horse mingled steaming in the cold morning air as his Lord Father had the man cut down from the wall and dragged before them. Robb and Jon sat tall, still on their horses, with Bran between them on his pony, trying to seem older than 7, trying to pretend that he'd seen this all before. A faint wind blew through the holdfast gate. Over their heads flapped the banner of the Starks of Winterfell, a gray direwolf racing across the ice-white field. Bran's father sat solemnly on his horse, long brown hair stirring in the wind. His closely trimmed beard was shot with white, making him look older than his 35 years. He had a grim cast to his gray eyes this day, and he seemed not at all the man who would sit before the fire in the evening and talk softly of the age of heroes and the children of the forest. We're really gonna get lit at this rate. He had taken off Father's face, Bran thought, and donned the face of Lord Stark of Winterfell. There were questions asked and answers given there in the chill of the morning, but afterward Bran could not recall much of what had been said. Finally, his Lord Father gave a command, and two of his guardsmen dragged the ragged man to the ironwood stump in the center of the square. They forced his head down onto the hard black wood. Lord Eddard Stark dismounted, and his ward Theon Greyjoy brought forth the sword. Ice. That sword was called. It was as wide across as a man's hand and taller than Robb. The blade was Valyrian steel, spell-forged and dark as smoke. Nothing held like an edge like Valyrian steel. His father peeled off his father, oh my god. His father peeled off the gloves and handed them to Jory Casil, the captain of his household guard. He took hold of the ice with both hands and said, "In the name of Robert of the House Baratheon, the first of his name, King of the Andals and the Rhoynar and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm by the word of Eddard of House Stark, Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North, I do sentence you to die." He lifted the great sword high above his head. Bran's bastard brother Jon Snow moved closer. "Keep the pony well in hand," he whispered, "and don't look away. Father will know if you do." Bran kept his pony well in his hand and did not look away. His father took off the man's head with a single sure stroke. Blood sprayed out across the snow as red as summer wine. One of the horses reared and had to be restrained to keep from bolting. Bran could not take his eyes off the blood. The snows around the stump drank it eagerly, reddening as he watched. The head bounced off a thick root and rolled. It came up near Greyjoy's feet. Theon was a lean, dark youth of 19 who found everything amusing. He laughed, put his boot on the head, and kicked it away. "Ah," Jon muttered, low enough so Greyjoy did not hear. He put a hand on Bran's shoulder, and Bran looked over at his bastard brother. "You did well," Jon told him solemnly. Jon was 14 and had an old hand at justice. It seemed colder on the long ride back to Winterfell, though the wind had died by then and the sun was higher in the sky. Bran rode with his brothers well ahead of the main party, his pony struggling hard to keep up with their horses. "The deserter died bravely," Robb said. He was big and broad and growing every day, with his mother's coloring the fair skin, red-brown hair, and blue eyes of the Tullys of Riverrun. He had courage at least. "No," Jon said quietly. It was not courage. This one was dead of fear. You could see it in his eyes start. Jon's eyes were gray, so dark they seemed almost black, but there was little they did not see. He was of an age with Robb, but they did not look alike. Jon was slender, where Robb was muscular, dark where Robb was fair, graceful and quick where his half-brother was strong and fast. Robb was not impressed. "The others take his eyes," he swore. "He died well. Race you to the bridge?" "Done," Jon said, kicking his horse forward. Robb cursed and followed, and they galloped off down the trail, Robb laughing and hooting, Jon silent and intent. The hooves of their horses kicked up the showers of snow as they went. Bran did not try to follow. His pony could not keep up. He had seen such ragged man's eyes, and he was thinking of them now. After a while, the sound of Robb's laughter receded and the woods grew silent again. So deep in thought that he had never heard the rest of the party until his father moved up to ride beside him. "Are you well, Bran?" he asked, not unkindly. "Yes, father," Bran told him. He looked up, wrapped in his furs and leathers, mounted on his great war horse. The Lord Father loomed over him like a giant. "Robb says the man died bravely, but Jon says he was afraid." "What do you think?" his father asked. Bran thought about it. Can a man still be brave if he's afraid? "That is the only time a man can be brave," his father told him. "Do you understand why he did it?" "He was a wildling," Bran said. "They carry off women and sell them to the others." His Lord Father smiled. "Old Nan has been telling you stories again. In truth, the man was an oath-breaker, a deserter from the Night's Watch. No man is more dangerous. The deserter knows his life is forfeit if he is taken, so he will not flinch from any crime, no matter how vile. But you mistake me. The question was not why the man had to die, but why I must do it." Bran had no answer for this. King Robert has a headsman, he said uncertainly. "He does," his father admitted, "as did the Targaryen kings before him. Yet our way is the older way. The blood of the first men still flows in the veins of the Starks, and we hold to the belief that the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. If you take a man's life, you owe it to him to look into the eyes and hear his final words. And if you cannot bear to do that, then perhaps the man does not deserve to die. One day, Bran, you will be Robb's bannerman, holding a keep of your own for your brother and your king, and justice will fall to you. When that day comes, you must take no pleasure in the task, but neither must you look away. A ruler who hides behind paid executioners soon forgets what death is." That was when Jon reappeared on the crest of the hill before them. He waved and shouted down at them, "Father, Bran, come quickly, see what Robb has found." Then he was gone again. Jory rode up beside them. "Trouble, my lord?" "Beyond the doubt, lord," father said. "Come, let us see what mischief my sons have rooted out now." He sent his horse into a trot. Jory and Bran and the rest came after. They found Robb on the river bank of the North Bridge with Jon still mounted beside him. The late summer snows had been heavy this moon turn. Robb stood knee-deep in white, his hood pulled back so the sun shone in his hair. He was cradling something in his arm while the boys talked in hushed, excited voices. The riders picked their way very carefully through the drifts, groping for solid footing on the hidden, uneven ground. Jory Cassell and Theon Greyjoy were the first to reach the boys. Greyjoy was laughing and joking as he rode. Bran heard the breath go out of him. "Gods!" he exclaimed, struggling to keep control of the horse as he reached for a sword. Jory's sword was already out. "Robb, get away from it," he called as his horse reared under him. Robb grinned and looked up from the bundle in his arms. "She can't hurt you," he said. "She's dead, Jory." Bran was afire with curiosity by then. He would have spurred the pony faster, but his father made them dismount beside the bridge and approach on foot. Bran jumped off and ran. By then, Jon, Jory, and Theon Greyjoy had all dismounted as well. "What in the seven hells is it?" Greyjoy was saying. "A wolf," Robb told him. "A freak," Greyjoy said. "Look at the size of it." Bran's heart was thumping in his chest as he pushed through a waist-high drift to his brother's side. Half buried in blood-stained snow, a huge dark shape slumped in death. Ice had formed on its shaggy gray fur, and the faint smell of corruption clung to it, like a woman's perfume. Bran glimpsed blind eyes crawling with maggots, a wide mouth full of yellow teeth. But it was the size of it that made him gasp. It was bigger than his pony, twice the size of the largest hound in his father's kennel. "It's no freak," Jon said calmly. "That's a direwolf. They grow larger than the other kind." Theon Greyjoy said, "There's not been a direwolf sighted south of the wall in 200 years. "I see one now," Jon replied. Bran tore his eyes away from the monster. That was when he noticed the bundle in Robb's arm. He gave a cry of delight and moved closer. The pup was a tiny ball of gray-black fur, its eyes still closed. It nuzzled blindly against Robb's chest as he cradled it, searching for milk among his leathers, making a sad little whimpering sound. Bran reached out hesitantly. "Go on," Robb told him. "You can touch him." Bran gave the pup a quick nervous stroke, then turned as Jon said, "Here you go." His half-brother put a second pup into his arms. "There are 5 of them." Bran sat down in the snow and hugged the pup up to his face. Its fur was soft and warm against his cheek. "Direwolves loose in the realm after so many years," muttered Holan, the master of horse. I like it not. It's a sign, Jory said. Father frowned. This is only a dead animal, Jory, he said, yet he seemed troubled. Snow crunched under his boots as he moved around the body. Do we know what killed her? There's something in the throat, Rob told him, proud to have found the answer before his father even asked. There, just under the jaw. His father knelt and groped under the beast's head with his hand. He gave a yank and held it up for all to see. A foot of shattered antler, tine snapped off, all wet with blood. A sudden silence descended over the party. The men looked at the antler uneasily. No one dared to speak. Even Bran could sense their fear, though he did not understand. His father tossed the antler to the side and cleansed his hands in the snow. I'm surprised she lived long enough to whelp, he said. His voice broke the spell. Maybe she didn't, Jory said. I've heard tales. Maybe the bitch was already dead when the pumps came. Born with the dead, another man put in. Worse luck. No matter, said Poland. They'd be dead soon enough, too. Bran gave a wordless cry of dismay. The sooner, the better, the angry Jory agreed. He drew his sword. Give the beast here, Bran. The little thing squirmed against him as if it had heard and understood. No, Bran cried out fiercely. It's mine. Put away your sword, Greyjoy, Robb said. For a moment he sounded as commanding as their father, like the Lord he would be someday. We will keep these pups. You could not do that, boy, said Harwin, who was Holand's son. It'd be a mercy to kill them, Holand said. Bran looked to his lord father for rescue, but only got a frown, a furrowed brow. Holand speaks truly, son. Better a swift death than a hard one from cold and starvation. No! He could feel tears welling in his eyes, and he looked away. He did not want to cry in front of his father. Robb resisted stubbornly. Sir Roderick's red bitch whelped again last week, he said. It was a smaller litter, only 2 live pups. She'll have enough milk. So she'll rip them apart when they come to nurse. Lord Stark, Jon said. It was strange to hear him call father that, so formal. Bran looked at him with desperate hope. There are 5 pups, he told father. 3 male, 2 female. What of it, Jon? You have 5 true-born children, Jon said. 3 sons, 2 daughters. The direwolf is the sigil of your house. Your children were meant to have these pups, my lord. Bran saw his father's face change, saw the other men exchange glances. He loved Jon with all his heart at that moment. Apparently, my light has a timer. Or it's dead. So now we're just really setting the mood to go into the next, and why we're taking this little light debacle break, because again, Haunt Miss Express. Now it's a good time to get caught up on those drinks, because I'm pretty sure I've watched half of this chapter. So let's get litty, y'all. He loved Jon with all his heart at that moment. Even at 7, Bran understood what his brother had done. The count had come right only because Jon had omitted himself. He had included the girls, included even Rhaegon the baby, but not the bastard who bore the surname Snow, the name that custom decreed to be given to all those in the north unlucky enough to be born with no name of their own. Their father understood as well. You want no pup for yourself, Jon? He asked softly. The direwolf graces the banners of House Stark, Join pointed out. I am no Stark, father. The Lord Father regarded Jon thoughtfully. Robb rushed into silence. Okay, sorry guys, it is a little dark in here. The Lord Father regarded Jon thoughtfully. Robb rushed into the silence he loved. I will nurse him myself, father, I promise. I will soak a towel with warm milk and give him suck from that. Me too, Bran echoed. The Lord weighed his sons long and carefully with his eyes. Easy to say and harder to do. I will not have you wasting the servants' time with this. If you want these pups, you'll feed them yourselves. Is that understood?" Bran nodded eagerly. The pup squirmed in his grasp, licked at his face with a worm tongue. "You must train them as well," their father said. "You must train them. The kennel master will have nothing to do with these monsters, I promise you that. And the gods will help you if you neglect them or brutalize them or train them badly. These are not dogs to beg for treats and slink off at a kick. The direwolf will rip a man's arm off his shoulders as easily as a dog will kill a rat. Are you sure you want this?" "Yes, father," Bran said. "Yes," Rob agreed. "The pups may die anyway, despite all you do." "They won't die," Rob said. "We won't let them die." "Keep them then, Jory. Desmond, gather up the other pups. It's time we were back to Winterfell." It was not until they were mounted on their way that Bran allowed himself to taste the sweet air of victory. By then his pup was snuggled inside his leathers, warm against him, safe for the long ride home. Bran, I don't know why I keep saying Bran. Bran was wondering what to name him. Halfway across the bridge, Jon pulled up suddenly. "What is it, Jon?" their Lord Father asked. "Can you hear it?" Bran could hear the wind in the trees, the clatter of their hooves on the ironwood planks, the whispering of hungry pup, but Jon was listening to something else. "There," Jon said. He swung his horse around and galloped back across the bridge. They watched him dismount where the direwolf lay dead in the snow, watched him kneel. A moment later, he was riding back to them, smiling. "He must have crawled away from the others," Jon said. "Or been driven away," their father said, looking at the sixth pup. His fur was white where the rest of the litter was gray. His eyes were as red as the blood of the ragged man who had died the morning. Bran thought it curious that this pup alone would have opened his eyes while the others were still blind. "An albino," Theon Greyjoy said with a wry amusement. "This one will die even faster than the others." Jon Snow gave his father's word a long, chilling look. "I think not, Greyjoy," he said. "This one belongs to me." Okay, before we jump into the next chapter, just gonna go ahead and finish our cup of wine here because I botched Bran's name so badly that it's embarrassing because I know his name, but I don't know his name, if you get what I mean. When I read and my brain and my eyes and the wine all hits together, his name is not his name. So I'm just going to need everyone to also make sure you're sipping along. And if you're not drinking alcohol, again, use that imagination we talked about. Just a little top off. All right, chapter 2. Okay, for those of you watching the video, this is the second time I have done some random movement and Zoom has done some things. So we got our laser show last week and now we have balloons. Okay, I don't know how to make that happen again, but here we go, chapter 2. Woo! Lady Catelyn Stark. Catelyn had never liked the Godswood. She had been born at Twilight River Run, far to the south of the Red Fork of the Trident. The Godswood there was a garden bright and airy, where the tall redwoods spread dappled shadows across tinkling streams. Birds sang from the hidden nest, and the air was spicy with the scent of flowers. The gods of Winterfell kept a different sort of wood. It was a dark, primal place, 3 acres of old forest untouched for 10,000 years as the gloomy castle rose around it. It smelled of moist earth and decay. No redwoods grew here. This was a wood of stubborn centennial trees armored in gray-green needles of mighty oaks of ironwoods as old as the realm itself. Here, thick black trunks crowded close together while twisted branches wove a dense canopy overhead and misshapen roots wrestled beneath the soil. This was a place of deep silence and brooding shadows and the gods who lived here and had no names. But she knew she wouldn't find her husband here tonight. Whenever he took a man's life, afterward he would seek the quiet of the gods' wood. Catelyn had been anointed with the 7 oils and named in the rainbow of light that filled the sept of River Red. She was of faith like her father and grandfather and his father before him. Her gods had names and their faces were as familiar as the faces of her parents. Worship was a septon with a censer, the smell of incense, a 7-sided crystal alive with light, voices raised in song. The Tullys kept at God's wood, as all great houses did, but it was only a place to walk or read or lie in the sun. Worship was for the sept. For her sake, Ned had built a small sept where she might sing to the 7 faces of gods, but the blood of the first men still flowed in the veins of the Starks, and his own gods were the old ones, the nameless, faceless gods of the greenwood they shared with the vanished children of the forest. At the center of the grove, an ancient weirwood brooded over a small pool where the waters were black and cold. The heart tree, Ned called it. The wirewood's bark was white as bone and its leaves stark red like 1,000 blood-stained hands. A face had been carved in the trunk of the great tree, its features long and melancholy, the deep-cut eyes red with dried sap and strangely watchful. They were old, those eyes, older than Winterfell itself. They had seen Brandon the Builder set the first stone of the tales were true. They had watched the castle's granite walls rise around them. It was said that the children of the forest had carved the faces in the trees during the dawn centuries before the coming of the first men across the narrow sea. In the south, the last weirwoods had been cut down or burned out 1,000 years ago. Except on the Isle of Faces where the green men kept their silent watch. Up here it was different. Every castle had its god's wood, and every god's wood had its heart tree, and every heart tree its face. Catelyn found her husband beneath the weirwood, seated on a moss-covered stone. The great sword ice was across his lap, and he was cleaning the blade in those waters black at night. 1,000 years of humus lay thick upon the godswood floor, swallowing the sound of her feet. But the red eyes of the weirwood seemed to follow her as she came. "Ned," she called softly. He lifted his head to look at her. "Catelyn," he said, his voice a distant and formal. "Where are the children?" He would always ask her that, in the kitchen arguing about the names for the wolf pups. She spread her cloak on the forest floor and sat beside the pool, her back to the weirwood. She could feel the eyes watching her, but did her best to ignore them. Arya is already in love and Sansa is charmed and gracious, but Rickon is not quite sure. "Is he afraid?" Ned asked. "A little," she admitted. "He is only 3. Ned frowned. He must learn to face his fears. He will not be 3 forever, and winter is coming. "Yes," Catelyn agreed. The words gave her a chill, as they always did. The Stark words. Every noble house had its words, family mottos, touchstones, prayers of sorts. They boasted of honor and glory, promised loyalty and the truth, swore faith and courage. All but the Starks. "Winter is coming," said the Stark words. Not for the first time, she reflected on a strange people the Northerners were. "The man died well, I'll give him that," Ned said. He had a swatch of oiled leather in one hand. He ran it lightly up the great sword as he spoke, polishing the metal to a dark glow. "I was glad for Bran's sake. You would have been proud of Bran." "I'm always proud of Bran," Catelyn replied, watching the sword as he stroked it. She could see the rippling deep within the steel, where the metal had been folded back on itself 100 times in foraging. Catelyn had no love for swords, but she could not deny that ice had its own beauty. It had been forged in Valyria before the doom had come to the old freehold when the ironsmiths had worked their metal with spells as well as hammers. 400 years old it was, and as sharp as the day it was forged. The name it bore was older still, a legacy from the Age of Heroes where the Starks were the kings in the north. He was the fourth this year, Ned said grimly. The poor man was half mad. Something had put a fear in him so deep that my words could not reach him. He sighed. Ben writes that the strength of the Night's Watch is down below 1,000. It's not only desertions, they're losing men on ringings as well. Is it the wildlands, she asked. Who else? Ned lifted eyes, looked down the cool, still length of it, and it will only grow worse. The day may come when I will have no choice but to call the banners and ride north to deal with this king beyond the wall for good and all. Beyond the wall? The thought made Catelyn shudder. Ned saw the dread on her face. Mance Rayder is nothing for us to fear. There are darker things beyond the wall. She glanced behind her at the heart tree, the pale bark red eyes watching, listening, thinking its long, slow thoughts. His smile was gentle. You listen to too many of old Nan's stories. The others are dead as the children of the forest, gone 8,000 years. Maester Luwin will tell you they will never lived at all. No living man has ever seen one. Until this morning, no living man had ever seen a direwolf either, Catelyn reminded him. I ought to know better than to argue with the Tully, he said with a rueful smile. He slid ice back into his sheath. You did not come here to tell me this crib tells. I know how little you like this place. What is it, my lady? Catelyn took her husband's hand. There were grievous news today, my lord. I did not wish to trouble you until you had cleansed yourself. There was no way to soften the blow, so she told him straight. I am so sorry, my love. Jon Arryn is dead. His eyes found her, and she could see how hard it took him, and she had known it would. In his youth, Ned had fostered at the Eyrie, and the childless Jon Arryn had become a second father to him and his fellow ward, Robert Baratheon. When the Mad King Aerys II Targaryen had demanded their heads, the Lord of the Eyrie had raised a half-moon and falcon banners in revolt rather than give up those he had pledged to protect. And one day 15 years ago, the second father had become a brother as well, as he and Ned stood together in the Septa River Run to wed two sisters, the daughters of Lord Hoster Tully. Jon, he said, is this news certain? It was the king's seal, and the letter is in Robert's own hand. I saved it for you. He said Lord Arryn was taken quickly. Even Maester Pycelle was helpless, but he brought the milk of the poppy, so Jon did not linger long in pain. That is some small mercy, I suppose, he said. He could see the grief on his face, but even then he thought first of her. Your sister, he said, and Jon's boy. What word of them? The message said only that they were well and had returned to the Eyrie, Catelyn said. I wish they had gone to River Run instead. The Eyrie is high and lonely, and it was ever her husband's place, not hers. Lord Jon's memory will haunt each stone. I know my sister. She needs the comfort of her family and friends around her. Your uncle waits in the Vale, does he not? Jon named him Knight of the Gate, I heard. Catelyn nodded. Brynden will do what he can for her and for the boy. That is some comfort, but still. Go to her, Ned urged. Take the children. Fill her halls with noise and shouts and laughter. That boy of hers needs other children about him, and Lysa should not be alone in her grief. Would that I could, Catelyn said. The letter had other tidings. The king is riding to Winterfell to seek you out. This is where shit starts to get bad. But Daddy, I want to go to King's Landing. It took Ned a moment to comprehend her words, but when the understanding came, the darkness left his eyes. Robert is coming here. It took Ned a moment to comprehend her words, but when the understanding came, the darkness left his eyes. Robert is coming here. When she nodded, a smile broke across his face. Catelyn wished she could share his joy, but she had heard the talk in the yards, a direwolf dead in the snow, the broken antler in his throat. Dread coiled within her like a snake, but she forced herself to smile at this man she loved, the man who put no faith in science. I knew that would please you, she said. We should send word to your brother on the wall. Yes, of course, he agreed. Ben will want to be here. I shall tell Maester Lewin to send his swiftest bird. Ned rose and pulled her to her feet. Damnation, how many years has it been? And he gives us no more notice than this. How many in his party? Did the message say? I should think 100 knights at least, with all their retainers, and half again as many free riders. Cersei and the children will travel with them. Robert will keep an easy pace for their sakers, he said. It is just as well that they will give us more time to prepare. The Queen's brothers are also in the party, she told him. Ned grimaced at that. There was small love between him and the Queen's family, Catelyn knew. The Lannisters of Casterly Rock had come to the late Robert's cause when victory was all but certain, and he had never forgiven them. Well, if the price for Robert's company is an infestation of the Lannisters, so be it. It sounds as though Robert is bringing half his court. Where the king goes, the realm follows, she said. It will all be good to see the children. The youngest was still sucking at the Lannister woman's teat the last time I saw him. He must be, 5 now? Prince Tommen is 7, she told him, the same as Bran. Please, Ned, guard your tongue. The Lannister woman is our queen, and her pride is said to grow with every passing year. Ned squeezed her hand. There must be a feast, of course, with singers, and Robert will want to hunt. I shall send Jory south with an honor guard to meet them on the King's Road and escort them back. Gods, how are we going to feed them all? On his way already, he said. Damn the man, damn his royal hide. Okay, everyone, that is going to bring us to our stopping point for this episode. Again, thanks for bearing with me through this one. This was a challenging word night for me. It could be that it's after midnight, and it could be the Moscato. I also think that maybe the reason these books were sitting on my bookshelf for so many years is because I wasn't smart enough to even read these when I first got them, because clearly I can't read and speak words that are simple. Anyway, I hope even through the stutters, and the more stutters and the wrong names this week, that everyone still enjoyed themselves, is still getting into the story. We're really just getting started. Like, if we want to compare it to the show, we're only in maybe like the first 15 minutes of the first episode, so we still have a long way to go. But we're going to end here for tonight. We'll be back at it again with a couple more chapters next episode. So thank you for joining Let's Get Litty. Always appreciate the support and the love. And I hope you all are enjoying the story and enjoying your drinks. And we're going to sign off here with our signature laser show. And if you're not watching the video, I highly recommend it just for this and all the fun things I'm figuring out Zoom does based off of facial expressions. So there we go. Stay litty, everybody.